Two, one, and we are recording and
And
God
action.
and action. Mr. Vince Sheffield, former ATF, undercover ATF, author of Rat Snakes. And it's an awesome fucking book. I highly recommend it. In a world of political correctness, it's a beautifully hysterical, politically incorrect book. It's badass. And I just moved into a new apartment, and for whatever reason, the new web both decided to.
Oh, there you are.
Now we're back.
We're back.
There's a storm going on right now, and I don't know what's going on, but the microphone's fucked up, the webcam's fucked up, and the internet's chopping in and out. So this thing's held together with duct tape right now. So I have no idea why it's all happening, but we're gonna go with it anyway. But Mr. For all the new listeners, Mr. Sheffley's been on here twice. He's got a lot of badass stories in his book, Rat Snakes. It's on Audible, so if you're a dipshit like me and you don't want to read and you can just listen, you can listen. But there seems to be a lot going on in the news right now with the appointment of the new director of the ATF. And the former special forces guys I've had on here, my other ex-military friends, they all seem to have a big problem with whoever it is. And instead of being reactionary and throwing my uninformed opinion in the ring, I decided, wait, I'm friends with a guy that was in the ATF. Why don't I have him on and pick his brain? So with that, what is the concern, pro or cons, with the new ATF director? Is this just
There's,
all fluff?
there's real there's a basis for concern.
Okay.
Um, Chipman was a marginal agent. He rode coattails. Always inserted himself into the big deals, but was never the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Checked the boxes, moved on before he could be seen for the fraud he was.
Mm-hmm.
Moved up the chain. Got really politically savvy, and dude, the day he left, he went and stayed Gabby Gifford's gun grabbing nonprofit there, or whatever it is. You know, the Gifford
Yeah.
gun safety, whatever it is, and has been there ever since. And the guy is a partisan hack, and anyone who has any expectation of law enforcement, it's generally that we at least appear or try to be apolitical.
Mm-hmm.
We don't pick sides. They were very serious when I got hired on, and that was a big part of my interviews and my panel interviews. Was I able to leave my personal feelings out of the gun trade and enforce the laws without prejudice and passion? Because we're enforcing the most unpopular laws since Prohibition. This guy is not that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's a good point. Yeah, because you do always see that. I mean, I was just listening to a book this morning about the former head of CIA counterintelligence, James Angleton, and he was the head of counterintelligence under Kennedy. But even his biggest thing, it was like, when asked towards the end of his career, it was like, what's the most important virtue in being the head of counterintelligence? And he was like, you report to the president. You don't report to a Republican or a Democrat. You report to the president. And he was like, once we sway from that structure, that's how you fall into third world nation, banana republic, KGB.
Yeah, you're driving. ATF is not a legislative body.
Yeah.
It's very simple. I
Yeah.
mean, they make it complicated, and some of our tasks are somewhat technical,
Yeah.
but not complicated.
Yeah.
You have a license. You're required to be inspected every year. We inspect you. We do it in the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. Everybody makes mistakes. We enforce the laws with a great deal of discretion, and that's how it should be. You have someone pulling the director's strings, the puppet master. You don't need to bother with getting a consensus in Congress to improve or change or add or modify existing laws. You just do it.
Yeah.
You just do it. You make policies that are so destructive. He's going to get agents killed if this guy gets confirmed.
You think so?
Because the policies he's going to pursue are going to piss people off.
Now,
and they're going to be unreasonable reaches of authority. I don't see him getting out of committee. He's known to be untruthful. He's known to manipulate facts. He's known to say stupid things. This should be a no-brainer. I don't see him making it and getting confirmed, but hey, I didn't see Joe Biden getting elected either.
Very true. It's very true. Yeah, I mean, shit happens. Again, because I am someone who is more well-versed in biology, and when I step outside of that field, I try to defer to people who actually know what the fuck they're talking about. So again, I don't want to just, regurgitate facts and speaking points that other people are saying. I'd rather pick your brain. What policies is he going to implement that, as you said, could get agents killed, are going to be highly unpopular? Because, again, all of my friends are Republicans and ex-military, so I'm not exactly getting an unbiased sound off when I talk to friends about this. So I want to hear it from you. What do you think he's going to do that's necessarily unpopular?
I have no idea what he will do. I don't have a crystal ball. I know what he has said he thinks is prudent. I know the policies he supports. But for example, these red flag laws. Mm-hmm. Now, these things are a red herring. They're potentially a tool, but like any tool, can be abused. You got the situation where now they're revisiting the AR pistols. Mm-hmm. ATF ruled they were fine, they were legal, they were designed to be fired, not to be fired from the shoulder, blah, blah, blah. Then they came back under pressure from the Biden administration and wanted to outlaw them as short barrel rifles. They put it in the Federal Register. They try to sneak stuff out there, and it's just a policy. It's not a law. Mm-hmm. But they were going to classify them as short barrel rifles under the National Firearms Act, which means all 4 or 7 million. I keep hearing all these different numbers. There's millions of those things out there. Everyone either has to relinquish it or register it and pay a $200 tax. That's going to piss a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And what is the end game to a policy like that? I'm not paying your tax. I'm not doing it. When I bought it, it was legal, and here's the paperwork. And ATF has been on the charts, off the charts about they can't decide. I'm not giving you. I own 20 of these things.
Yeah.
I run a game ranch or whatever. I'm not giving you $10,000 or giving you my guns. Well, what's next? ATF going to come up and take them?
Yeah.
That's inherently dangerous, even though you're talking about previously law-abiding citizens.
Yeah.
When you start throwing, making citizens felons instead of, they're virtually putting no resources into Chicago.
Yeah.
And there's more people shot with shitty $200 handguns on a weekend in Chicago than the whole country with short barreled or AR pistols. It's just that sort of willingness to become the gun police and think you can enforce your way out of our violent society.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't, yeah, it's, I think it was, who was it? I think it was Gandhi. It might have been Gandhi. It might have been someone else wrote all of these letters to Hitler saying only you can stop this madness. But what stopped Hitler was a wave of Soviet artillery. There were a bunch of peace protests in Japan. You know what stopped Japan? A nuclear warhead over a city. Unfortunately, we are apes, and you can't legislate your way out of that. It wasn't legal to fly planes into the World Trade Center, but it still happened. And what you touched on earlier is you are now, with the stroke of a pen, turning law-abiding citizens into felons. So, like, I own an iPhone. If you make a law tonight that says iPhones are illegal, Well, sure. If in the future I go out and pursue an iPhone, that shows that I have like felonious activity and intent. But right now, I'm just a dude with an iPhone, and the difference is I can't hurt anyone with this. Now, if this is a weapon, and you are now turning me, a law-abiding vanilla citizen, into a felon, and now you are going to enforce that at gunpoint with a stack of ATF agents decked out in SWAT gear. Now you're
And
asking for death all around, correct?
what the Giffords and Chipmans and um, the people who are so anti-gun don't get is the vast majority of the killings and what have you are done. They're not done through a legal process. Yes, every now and then some crazy will go in and buy a gun legally and go shoot up a bunch of people. But the vast majority of criminals don't go in. They don't produce their driver's license, their identification, do a background check. So you can make as many laws as you want.
Yeah.
They don't follow them. You're not going to reduce gun violence by putting more laws out there. You ask me, enhance. You get a guy out there right now does his first time armed robbery at 19 or whatever. He catches a felony conviction, whatever. ATF goes after him, say it was a violent takeover robbery. This guy is facing 5 years in federal prison with the sentencing guidelines and 10K downward departures and 6 months probation. No, you want to get their attention. I've seen it work. 20 years. You're a felon. You got a gun. And especially if you're using it in yet another crime, you get 20 years.
Yeah.
And no, probation.
Yeah. It's
Like, did you see the president's press conference when he announced Chipman?
I watched. Yes, I did. I think it was like 30 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I watched that.
Are you familiar? Are you familiar with what a ghost gun is?
Loose. I had heard the term before that. I had always heard the term as like 3D printed, but the way Biden made it sound, he made it sound like you buy them. And again, I'm not well versed on this, so I don't know what it actually is. I thought it was 3D printed.
People have made 3D guns, 3D printed polymer guns. What they're speaking of specifically is there's a company out there, or several companies, I guess, and they literally send you a chunk of metal and the template and all the instructions and all the specs. And as long as you have a metal lathe, and as long as you have a drill press, a high-end drill press, as long as you know how to weld or solder or work metal, over a period of time, you can turn that into a AR-15 lower, and it's unserialized.
Yeah.
I got news for you. There's been one or two really, really savvy criminals I've arrested out there, highly educated and articulate and intellectual, that probably could and maybe in their wildest imagination would do that.
Mm-hmm.
But, dude's slinging crack on the street corner. He doesn't have those resources. He wouldn't know where to begin.
Yeah.
Would probably cut his finger off with a metal lathe. And he literally made that an issue during a press conference. And I've talked to everybody I know that, I stay in touch with. Nobody's ever seen one of these ghost guns in the public. I know they've gone out there. I know there's a couple out there.
Right.
Somebody's made some. I get it. But really, that's where our resources are going.
It sounds like money laundering. That's what it sounds like. It's the way, again, that's the importance of having on someone like you is when he said that to me, someone that doesn't know anything about it, I thought there were actual kits that you could just assemble.
Yeah, they're thinking people are buying these unserialized guns, hand over fist, and they got 50 ARs in their garage they bought for $1,500 and they're ready to go. And that's misleading, and it's not genuine, and he loses credibility in the firearms community. He has no credibility in the firearms community anyway, because he's already told people go out and fire a couple blasts of a shotgun out your window. Now run off those, heavily armed home invaders.
Fucking moron. It's that's but that's like saying you can't own grapes because you might start selling wine on a massive scale.
Dude, that's a perfect analogy.
It's like what the fuck? But that's not even a good analogy because any moron can kind of figure out how to make wine, right? You just kind of stick it in a bottle and put it in the dark. I don't know how to work a metal lathe. I don't have those. I mean, that's a skill. That's a fine honed skill. And if you're smart enough to take a block of metal and turn it into a weapon, well, you're probably smart
You're
enough.
going to get a manufacturing license and make them legal anyway and sell them.
You're gonna start an arms company, or you're just gonna go work as a metal lathe operator and make six figures, and you won't need whatever the fuck you were making the gun for. It doesn't
Right.
it doesn't stack up. It's the amount of money you could do with that is
It's those kind of ridiculous issues that Chipman will be dangerous in, because whatever the administration says is what Chipman will do.
Mhm.
And that's the whole point of having ATF hadn't had we were never under Treasury. We didn't have to have a confirmed, Senate confirmed director. And that's the whole point, because that director is now above the fray and supposedly not susceptible to undue influence from his boss.
Mhm. Yeah. It definitely kind of seems like a way to move her. You're right. It kind of seems like going into Iraq right after 9/11, and it's like, wait, hold the fuck, wait, what? Why are we doing that? It kind of seems like what this is a foot in the door for something else, and I don't know what that something else will be. But when
Well, it can't be good. It
can't be good.
good.
It can't be good. When we have to go after ghost guns and kits, it's like, well, okay, what are they actually doing? There's something behind this. That's the Trojan horse. And what you said about him being dishonest, I actually don't know a lot about Waco, but I'm pretty sure it's not accurate when he said last week in an interview or 2 weeks ago that the Branch Davidians shot down 2 FBI helicopters with a Ma Deuce.
That was an old interview. I think that was done a couple years ago.
Oh, well, then I saw it 2 weeks ago. Okay.
Right. Yeah, and that's absurd. Treasury, we got our ass handed to us after Waco.
Yeah.
Although, understand this, we're in the lawful performance of our duties, and they were the bad guys. There's no doubt about that. It's
Sure.
unequivocal, and anybody says different is moronic.
Sure.
We went about it the wrong way, obviously. Our tactics were flawed, to say the least.
Sure.
But at no point did they shoot down any helicopters. They shot at them on the first day.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing. They were shooting at cops.
Yeah.
Nobody brought down a helicopter with a Ma Deuce or a Barrett or anything else. They had Barretts,
Yeah.
but it's that kind of disingenuine sort of, I know a little bit about everything about ATF. He touts himself as a case agent on the Waco case. There were dozens of case agents in the prosecution phase after the place burned down and the few remaining defendants were tried and what have you. There were dozens of agents assigned out to work that case. Some the forensics, some background, different aspects of the case, working up witnesses and what have you. But he wasn't the main guy, but he lets himself out to be that he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to me, I'm not taking some people get very passionate about Waco. I'm upfront when I say I don't know anything about it. I know you, and I take your word for it. I've talked to you a couple times. I judge it on that. To me, it's not even like what Waco was. To me, it's the outright lying about it. I don't care if we're talking about Waco or about did you take your dog for a walk. When there's a blatant lie about it, that's when it seems. Again, it's like Bill Clinton. I don't give a shit that Bill Clinton cheated on his wife and got a blowjob in the Oval Office. I don't give a fuck. The whole problem.
That he lied about it.
Yeah, so it's I don't. Yeah,
And that's where That's where we got pummeled. I mean, we were going to get pummeled anyway because it was such a huge fiasco.
Sure.
But had our leadership walked out there and say, you know what, we acted on bad information. We made a horrible judgment that morning to go forward with the raid. And as a result, we lost 4 good agents and have 16 wounded. Who's going to beat that guy up?
Yeah.
Nobody's, I mean, they're going to still say, well, why'd you do it? And whether, but they're not going to beat him up. The minute you go, oh, we had no idea we were compromised. Do you think nobody's going to find out about that? There were 100 agents there that saw and heard everything that went down. You think they're going to sit quiet after what you put them through?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a lie. It's always the lie and the cover up.
Yeah.
But when you have someone like Chipman who is proven to be willing to bend the truth on little issues, what do you think he'll do when he's invited over to the Oval Office and Joe and Kamala put their arms around him and say, you know, you're our guy, but we really, really need you to do this?
You know what?
The answer is not going to be, well, I'm sorry, Mr. President, that's not what my agency does, and that's not under our charter from Congress. So you're going to find somebody else to go, whatever, take up a bunch of guns that are legal or whatever it is. I don't trust him, and you got to be able. We are one of the most influential agencies in the federal government in terms of law enforcement. Nobody else's mandate is delineated in the Constitution.
Yeah.
You know, the Constitution doesn't say anything about bank robbery or interstate trafficking in automobiles or fugitives from justice or any of the, or narcotics. You know, but it says everything about the right of the people to keep and bear arms.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to be the protectors of that while making sure the people that don't have that right get their ass hammered.
Yeah. Yeah. And you make a very good point. And an analogy, or not analogy, I guess a comparison to draw there is James Bamford wrote the book Shadow Factory, the post 9/11 ultra secret NSA. He wrote it in like 2004. It's a great book all about NSA eavesdropping. Yeah, it's an awesome book, man. It's on Audible. It's not as good as Rat Snakes, but in it he talks about who was it? It was I think not Clapper or Michael Hayden, whoever the head of the NSA was at the time, who in a way you could say it's similar, right? It's the right to privacy in a way that is kind of loosely in the Constitution as well. But what you said about, you know, this guy going to the
it's not loosely in the Constitution. It's in the Fourth Amendment.
Well, that's what I mean. Is it's the same in terms of ATF Second Amendment. It's the same as
right.
So you have this parallel where it is kind of like the ATF, where it's woven into the Constitution. That being said, Michael Hayden was actually invited over to the Oval Office with George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, and they per his words, put their arms around him. And this is a guy that grew up always loving, you know, attention and loving approval from his father. They put their arms around him and they called him Mikey. And they said, hey, Mikey, we really need to wiretap the U.S. And he let it go through, and he lied about it under oath, as did Clapper. Now, if the NSA will lie about domestic wiretapping and surveillance, and the only way we learn about it is through Ed Snowden, like him or hate him, that's how we learned about it, is if you don't think that can happen with the ATF, if it happened once in 2003, they said, hey, Mikey, you know, these terrorists just took down the World Trade Center. Can you bend the laws? And, you know, they're alone in the Oval Office. He doesn't report to anyone except these two. And he goes, I'll see what I can do. Why wouldn't that happen again with something as incendiary as, you know, especially when you have shooting after shooting after shooting? Why wouldn't you have something come in where you have riots and George Floyd and whatever the hell's going on? You don't think that these guys are going to lean on him and go, hey,
not a lot on it. Absolutely.
And it's,
and if you have got to have in there with judgment and, more importantly, a spine. It needs to be understood, if I'm going to accept this nomination as the director, I'm running the agency, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to find. I mean, I get it. I don't know that I could stand up under that kind of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that's the kind of people we need to get in there. And I know guys that could do that job. I mean, I've met them.
Yeah.
and qualified, and they'll never be in there for that reason.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they've been known
Because
from
they're
time
qualified.
to time call ATF's baby ugly when it was ugly, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, you know, a lot of people don't like Mattis for what, you know, talking bad about the president while he's in office. Um, Despite being a Trump supporter myself, I do look at Mattis with some sort of integrity in that he thought we shouldn't withdraw from Syria. Trump thought we should. I'm not taking a stance on either we should or shouldn't. But the fact is he said, I don't think we should. And I think you need a Secretary of Defense who is aligned with your issues. At the
Well,
very
and I didn't like him speaking out.
yeah,
There's like an unwritten,
don't talk shit about the
you
commander.
know, a simple resignation would have been enough.
Sure.
And that would have been the thing, you know, that would show great integrity.
Sure. But we'll take what we do have, and he said, you know, you deserve a Secretary of Defense whose views are more aligned with yours. At the very least, I can give respect to that, and
Absolutely.
and I don't think we'll have that in the ATF. I don't think we'll have someone that will say, agree to disagree, I resign. I think he got a yes man.
Well, that would appear so.
It's
Hold on, I got something going
you're
on
good.
there.
You're good. So what all do you know about? I don't know if it was passed or whatever, but there was a bill I know being proposed by the Biden administration for police to be able to enter a gun owner's house without a warrant to seize their guns. Do you think that
I'm familiar with what you're talking about? Again, it was that whole red flag, mental instability thing. I think it died on the floor. I don't know that. I mean, don't call me up tomorrow when they pass it and go, you said it died. But something like that, you know, it would take so much compromise to get through. It'd be so watered down because it goes directly against people's Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the wiretapping thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I think there should be an ability of law enforcement under well-documented, not FISA court documented, not behind closed door, secret, double secret, you know, warrants? Do I think there should be maybe some sort of ability if I'm a patrolman, if I'm a local police officer, mom or wife says, dude's going to kill somebody or kill him. Why do you say that? Because he told me we got in a fight last night. He said he's going to kill me and everybody. Do I think it would be a bad thing to be able to retain those weapons with an expectation that without spending thousands of dollars or anything else, this guy can clear his good name? He can either be psychologically evaluated, he can either be interviewed, and with some very strict parameters, you know, to determine, was he spouting off? Is he, you know, a long time good citizen, and, you know, whatever. Do I think it would be nice, you know, if you go to one of these mass shooters that they have come across, apparently somebody sort of red flag, even though I don't think there's any red flag laws out there now. There might be some state ones that I'm not familiar with. But apparently somebody crossed paths with the dude who shot up the whatever he shot in Colorado a couple weeks ago.
He shot up like a Whole Foods or something.
FedEx.
FedEx. That was a couple days ago, yeah.
Or whatever. You know, somebody had crossed paths with him. And the mother had said, I think this guy's suicidal for the following reason. Now, should he have been able to walk in and buy a gun? You know, I'm going to get a lot of haters on your podcast here. From me until something is satisfied.
You just broke up.
Yeah.
Mr. Sheffley, you just broke up. You said I'm going to get a lot of haters, and then it broke up.
There you are.
Sorry, internet. It's
I would like to see a very limited ability to temporarily, like I said, you know, this is a free country. I imagine if they wrote the strictest version of the red flag laws they're talking about, at some time in my life, I would have been in violation. Spouting off to a friend who decides to run to the cops. Oh, he said this.
Yeah.
Where I never had any intention, was never going to, like
Yeah.
venting.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't have to spend $10,000 to get 9 psychologist reports and pay for court costs and have a hearing and all that just to get my guns back in a scenario like that.
Yeah.
But it would be nice if maybe a 3-day cooling off period or something.
Sure.
Like if this dude, if when they interviewed this guy, if they could have put an addendum in the background check.
Yeah.
We're not saying no, but we're sending a teletype, an email, a notification to the local police department who had interviewed him 6 months or a year earlier over some, alleged threats. They're the only ones that can lift this.
Yeah.
And they have, 72 hours to go out and talk to him and lift it.
Yeah.
And say no, or go out and say, yeah, this guy still looks batshit crazy, and and then let him litigate it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, yeah, there's no black and white answer, like you can't say across the board that that's a bad idea. When someone walks into a school and shoots 20 people, and it's like, like the Parkland shooting, the FBI was already watching that kid. I mean, you can't say across the board that that's a bad idea. However, I also see, again, post 9/11 Patriot Act, you see how it gets used.
Pretty slow.
It gets used 20 years later. It starts to get used for other things. And how long until you have a barbecue and you say, I fucking hate that president, he outsourced my job, I lost my fucking job, and one of your friends gets it on video on Instagram, next thing you know, the ATF's at your house taking your rifles. Okay, sure, they'll clear you, give you your rifles back, but at what point does that lead to self-censorship, where now you watch what you say because you're scared of getting your shit taken? And that once we do that, well, now we're on a slippery slope to
that's a good point. That's a good point, because things can be interpreted differently.
Mm-hmm. Well, this podcast, I got suspended for you on YouTube a second time. The first time because I had on a CIA veteran who said that the election was stolen by the Biden administration, and the second time for having on an MD PhD from Cambridge saying that COVID lockdowns are ineffective. I'm now suspended for a second time. One more strike, I'm off YouTube for good.
Really?
Oh yeah, no, they're fucking communists. So now there is.
That's probably going to get you suspended again now.
Good. Well, it'll be it. Well, good. Fuck them. They're a bunch of dirty communists. But that's the thing. We can already see self-censorship, where now it's like, am I going to have this conversation with Mr. Sheffalu? Am I going to be candid, or am I going to be, am I going to avoid saying the word communist because I don't want to get kicked off YouTube? So there's already a self-censorship effect, and that's just with YouTube.
I don't. I got to tell you. Again, it's probably the cop in me. I don't know. Maybe where I was raised, how I was raised. I think we all could use a little self-censorship.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just saying.
I got you.
The Freedom Amendment is sacred. It's the holy grail of our Constitution. I defend it 100%. But I just got to tell you, a little censorship doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I know that's what Hitler did, but remember a day when, you got your head knocked in if you went up and spit on a cop or called him a fucking pig, sure, or a whatever. But because it's become so acceptable now, people have zero filters. And that's coming from me. And I have very few filters.
Sure.
But I try to temper my shit so as not to completely appear unhinged or dangerous or whatever. So that's what I'm talking about as far as the self-censorship.
Yeah. No,
they always say, well, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater and everything. Oh, but you can yell, you're a fucking whore, vice president so-and-so. No, you can't. I mean, you can, but so freedom of speech allows Nancy Pelosi to rip up the State of the Union address in front of the entire world
Yeah,
without consequence.
yeah,
Well, yeah, technically it does, but I personally don't think it should.
yeah. No, I would say that in a legal case, I do think that there can't be censorship. I think you have to be free to be able to call the president a dipshit or to tear up the State of the Union. However, I do think that people can react to you. So I can get on here and say a bunch of racial slurs. Technically, I am protected by the First Amendment. Now, if none of my friends want to hang out or associate with me anymore, well, now that's affecting my life and maybe I should censor myself. So I don't think there should be a state mandated censorship. But yeah, no, it's you need to get feedback. You need to learn
Well,
what you're fucking
well,
like.
okay. I'm with you. Like I said, if I'm going to err on any side in my personal interpretation or professional interpretation of First Amendment, I'm going to err with absolute.
Hmm.
You can say anything you want anytime, because going the other way, you don't know where to put on the brakes and stop.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, this unfettered. Well, you were talking about the freedom of speech, and go back to the barbecue.
Sure.
I'm sitting at a barbecue, and I say, fucking Pelosi and Nadler and a fucking bunch of socialist communists. I wish I could shoot them all.
Yeah.
That could easily trigger a red flag
Hmm.
visit and maybe confiscation. But I'm almost to the point where it maybe should, in my personal opinion.
Sure.
You know what? If you're patriotic enough to stand up for the Constitution and exhibit all these rights, enjoy all these rights, you have a responsibility to not say stupid shit like "I wish I could shoot a bunch of people"
Sure.
and own a gun.
Sure. I see that. No, I see that. I see
But I
that.
don't know how you enforce that. I don't know how you determine what's somebody blowing off steam and what's, or somebody just being too inebriated or, uneducated.
No, I agree with you. I mean, it almost is that cheesy quote, right? With great power comes great responsibility. If we're going to
Yeah,
live in this
exactly.
country, if we're going to live in this country where, God bless, I can get drunk as shit on the 4th of July, take my pants off, wave an American flag, and shoot off a Tommy gun. I would agree with you. Now, I don't know how you enforce it, but maybe you can't look at a camera and say, "I'm coming for you, Senator so and so,"
Right.
because that's an expressed threat. And with a weapon, right? Threat is intent times capability, whatever it is. So, when North Korea says, "I'm going to bomb you, America," everyone kind of says whatever. When Iran says it, and maybe they're testing missiles, well, now all of a sudden we put some carrier groups in that area because we're like, "What did you just say?" It's so I do agree with. Now I get the slippery. So how do you legislate that? How do you draw up the minute details? It's one of my extended family members lives in Austin. Just whatever, cousin, and
I've known Austin and
hell yeah, yeah, I need to go visit him. But I think 2 days ago there was a shooting there, and the first thing that happened was like my blood went cold, and I like called my cousin, and I was like, dude, he wasn't picking up, and I was like, fuck, and then he finally picked up. He was drunk. He was like visiting a friend in Vegas. He's like, "What's up, man?" And I was like, "Duh, fuck, dude. I thought you were in Austin. I just heard there's," but it was in that moment that all of a sudden it was like, "Hey, man, I have a friend in Boulder, Colorado, where a month ago that guy shot and killed 10 people at that grocery store." I called him at like 2 a.m. I was like, "Dude, he's been on the podcast." I was like, "Are you okay?" And he was like, "Yeah, what's up?" And when those things happen, all of a sudden it moves from just an article on the news to into your real life, and then all of a sudden you start going, maybe there should be a red flag law. Maybe there should be. I'm for all these freedoms. I lost a sibling to suicide in 2014.
Yeah.
It was with a handgun. He was a highly intelligent individual. Math, getting his graduate degree in physics and aerospace, worked for the genius guy that suffered depression his whole life. You know, when I think about that now, is it he would have done it anyway? Or is it, you know, if he hadn't been able to buy a weapon, would he still be here? It's, you know, it has to.
You know, and that goes to the root cause. And until we figure out, or we put more resources out there, maybe for the mentally ill or challenged, you know, the struggling people, it goes to the will of the person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't need guns to kill people.
No.
And
Yeah.
if we banned every gun in this country today,
Stabbings would go up.
you know how many homicides would be in Chicago next weekend?
The same,
30 or 40.
the same amount.
That'd just be a lot. They'd be a lot because they'd be with a crowbar or a knife or a car or
Yeah.
a broken bottle or.
They'd get creative. Like, you know, look at the United States in Vietnam and Afghanistan. Those people have a will to live, and they keep fighting. Man, if you want to fucking kill someone and you take away the guns and the knives, what do they do in jail? They take a toothbrush and they shave it into a shank.
And make a knife, right?
You'll find a, and if worse comes to worse, he'll use your bare hands. We are the.
And that was a point I was to make. You know, there can be a lot of what ifs regarding your sibling. Obviously, he was extremely depressed and in trouble. If he wanted to die, if I want to die, I'm gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'll get my hands on some prescription drugs and take a whole bottle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not hard to die.
Yeah, no, it's not. And that's what I always remind myself of is, dude, if you want to die, you'll find a way to do it. You can hang yourself, you can cut your wrist, you can, you know, and now
look at Epstein.
I guess the tricky question comes in, kind of like what you were saying, is what about when that person isn't suicidal, but instead they go into a kindergarten and they shoot 20 kids, and now all of a sudden it's like, okay, where do we draw the line? You know, and I don't think there is a black or white answer.
But again, if that crazy who killed all those kids, all these crazies who are doing senseless, cold-blooded murder, if they went in the NICS check, people said, no, don't got a reason, not giving you a reason, just no, can't buy a gun. All right, well, it looks like I have some burglarizing to do or,
yeah, I'll be back in the morning.
Go find a gun somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because if they're intent on making a name for themselves and going down in history as a bloodthirsty, crazy person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cocktail time.
That's awesome. That's fucking awesome. But yeah, you will find, you know, we saw in, what was it, 2016 or 15 in Nice, France, the guy got in that big truck and he killed 86 people. That Allahu Akbar plowed through a crowd in a fucking delivery truck. You know, look at the Japanese in World War II. When they realized they couldn't hit our ships with torpedoes, they just drove the planes into the ships. You're gonna find a way. And I say that loosely and I say it lightly, but it's also like, you know, is our money spent somewhere else? That doesn't mean stop trying to prevent these senseless killings, but maybe it goes from, and maybe this sounds too idyllic and romantic, do we shift money from enforcing all these laws to, do we put money into a better public mental health? Do we find, you know, whatever it is?
Why don't we do that while shifting our priorities from some of the nonsensical shit that we do from time to time and enforcing some of these silly policies?
Yeah.
And go with the laws we got on the books.
Yeah.
Tweak them.
Yeah.
Tweak them. If you've already been to prison, our society says you don't get to have a gun.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
And I think that's
now,
fine.
Personally, when I came on with ATF, we had a function called relief from disability investigations.
Okay.
So if you were 19 years old, got caught, charged with a felony burglary, and now you're 42 years old, a pastor in your church, have some kids, you want to hunt, you've not had so much as a speeding ticket, you could apply through the Treasury They would assign me the investigation. I would do a thorough background on you and make a recommendation
Mhm.
and say, no, you know what? This guy's done his time, or everything in his profile, his family, his neighbors says he's a good, God fearing, law abiding citizen. Let's lift his disability from that felony.
Yeah.
They took our money away for that. They literally defunded us. We could not spend any money or time or man hours on that.
Jesus.
But do I agree in general terms? In general, that if you've already been in prison once, you don't get to own guns. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Learn to bow hunt,
Yeah.
hunt with a black powder rifle. But you definitely have shown you are not
Yeah.
responsible enough to have something so lethal. But like I said, I've spent hundreds of man hours and thousands of dollars in taxpayer funds and manpower and resources and court resources to get a pretty bad guy, like a prior murderer who maybe did 3 years or 7 years in the state system for a second degree murder or something.
Mhm.
I'd prosecute him, just successfully prosecute him, either take a plea or convict him in trial. And because of the sentencing guidelines, they got 6 months time served because they're already been in jail, and 3 years supervised probation. Now, if I'm a gangster and I want to do gangster shit, that's not going to really deter me.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I'm a law-abiding citizen, it might deter me a little bit, but then I wouldn't be a felon, would I?
Yeah. It's
So,
yeah.
I mean, we got to get serious about shit hammering these people who are doing this.
Yeah.
Why aren't we just going freaking jackbooted thugs on the south side of Chicago
Just send in the National
and
Guard.
stopping and frisking everybody that even resembles a gangster?
I'm 100% for that, and it's you get to a certain point where it's like I always look at Europe and they have those no-go zones where all the immigrants have turned them into just these unlawful
Shitholes, yeah.
and to me when the domestic law enforcement can't even go there, to me that is the biggest sign of weakness, that you can't even enter areas of your own country. So when
Yeah, unless you're driving 6 deep,
yeah, yeah, or in an
you gotta send in 3 patrol cars for every freaking
yeah,
service call.
yeah, it's at a certain point you have to reclaim
Yeah,
territory.
you have to take your streets back.
So when it's something like Chicago, where I think Republicans and Democrats could all agree, dude, there's more killings there in a week. The news doesn't cover it because it's a gun-free zone. Dude, send in the fucking National Guard. I mean, look, if we can set up roadblocks in tiered security in Kabul and Riyadh and Baghdad, I mean, dude, why can't we take Chicago? It's
It, it's got to be the will of the people, though.
sure.
And apparently there is not that will.
Yeah.
I don't see, and I'm not going all controversial on you here,
Sure.
but I've seen tens of thousands of people rise up in the street and nonstop attention seeking for a police officer having killed somebody unjustifiably or whatever, which
Sure.
is always tragic and it should be addressed.
Yeah.
But then once they've gotten that addressed, why are they not packing up? They're funded, they're being funded.
Yeah.
The agitators, the protesters. Why are you not packing up your buses and taking over the streets of Chicago?
I know.
And saying this stops now, not one more death.
Yeah. No, you're 100% correct. I was just thinking that today, it's whatever people may or may not think about Chauvin is, I was thinking on the grand scheme of things, I would say it's probably a good thing, simply because it's proof that we live in a country where when the state overreaches, the citizens can rise up and they can enact change. If we tried to do this in China or the Soviet Union,
Uh,
we'd
uh,
all be gunned down. So whether or not you agree about, Chauvin should be charged, the very fact that we do live in a society where you can go out and protest against the police and enact change in a court of law, I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Whether or not you agree with the outcome or whoever it was, that's a beautiful thing. Why isn't that motivation? Why isn't that laser focus? Why isn't it on Chicago? Why isn't it on
New York,
New
LA.
LA, Atlanta? Why isn't it there?
Dude,
And
the people are shit down the streets in San Francisco. I worked up the street at the federal building in San Francisco. So I had great places to go have lunch and walk around, go smoke a cigarette downtown there. And I would go by the City Hall Plaza and just go out there and watch. Oh, I don't know. You might have a bunch of people out there doing Tai Chi and, moms with their kids running around and, whatever, hanging out in a sunny day and everything. And you can't walk in the plaza now for the tent city that is put in there.
Jesus.
That's just one example. We have got to learn to say no and mean it.
Yeah.
If you mean it, we no to gun violence. I think we can all probably, we won't agree because it doesn't serve certain agendas.
Sure.
I think common sense would dictate we could put a dent in it.
100%.
I'll give you an example. Remember the Marielito boat lifts in the 80s
Mm-hmm.
when all the Cuban criminals and everybody came to South Florida, and it got so bad, Florida was a no-go zone. The state of Florida, Time Magazine named it the most dangerous place in the world. George Bush stood up the vice presidential organized crime drug enforcement task force in South Florida, and everybody, every swinging dick, if you weren't involved in a case, a big case wherever you're at, you were going to South Florida for 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever. And we just flooded that place.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything that moved that looked like a narco freaking vehicle, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And so when I got hired with Customs before I went to ATF in Key West, it was to the point there was so much drugs coming in, you could go to the U.S. attorney with like a 50-kilo seizure of cocaine, and they'd say, take it to the state. We ain't got time. We ain't got the money. We ain't got the resources.
Yes.
But if you had a gun, and that was one of the big things, one of the underpinnings of the drug task force under H.W. Bush,
Mm-hmm.
vice president, was if you had a gun, it was going federal. It didn't matter whether you had an ounce or a pound or a kilo or a boatload.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what that did? I could still throw a rock in any direction and hit a drug dealer and search any house, every other house, and find huge loads of dope. I couldn't find a gun, and citizens weren't getting shot, and the big blue on blue shootouts and all the crazy shit that was going on down there subsided. Because you knew if, you know what, there's a gray area here that you might survive this craziness as long as you don't have a gun or use a gun while you're trying to.
Yeah.
And it made a difference. I would work the task force in Athens, Georgia. I was lucky enough to go back and go to my starting point.
Shout out Athens.
I was a cop in Athens, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Yeah. For everybody listening, I went to the University of Georgia. I was in Athens for 4 years.
And so I left, went with the feds, 10, 15 years passed, came back to Atlanta with ATF, and they needed some help, some resources out in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of gangster shit going on, a lot of drugs and violence. And so they sent me over there, and it was basically me. Now I could call on my boys to come down and help, but basically APD staffed it, and I just used my hammer with the federal courts and my money and resources, equipment, what have you. And we just started knocking their dicks in the dirt. If you had a crack rock, we're going to get you. If you had a pound, we were going to get you.
Yeah.
We were making hand-to-hands night and day and night and day. And then we come in with a big U.S. Marshals bus after about 3 months. We'd indict them all over the 3 months and just stack them up. And then we'd come in like Sherman going through Atlanta. And dude, we would arrest 50 or 60 people and put them on that U.S. Marshal's bus. And their family would never see them again outside the federal court system.
Jesus.
After about a year, these guys were seeing ATF agents on any corner. You'd literally hear them on a wire talking, or talk to them on a phone call, or be present when they were talking about, or on a search warrant. Dude would be going, baby, you got to tell them it's your gun. It's your gun, baby. You got to take that. I'll take the dope, but you got to take the gun. I can't do the Fed time. I can't do it. And in their minds, in the criminal community, they thought there was 100 ATF agents detailed to Athens, Georgia, when in reality, it was just me and a bunch of hard charging cops.
Yeah.
But it got their attention, and shit slowed down. You gonna make crime go away? No. But, there's kind of a gentlemanly thing out there about, you can't hurt people. You can steal and shit and sell drugs and everything. But if you start hurting people, then you're going to really, really get our attention.
Yeah.
And so they slow down. They don't stop.
Yeah. But no, I think that's an incredibly important point. Is, look, we're never going to live in a society where people aren't slinging cocaine or weed or whatever. It's impossible. You can't. But you can, it seems like, from what you just said, you can take your energies, your efforts, your resources, and you can pinpoint it on. It's like, okay, well, if we can't stop prostitution and we can't stop cocaine deals, can we at least stop innocent people getting shot? You can't stop 100%, but you can put a big enough dent in it with a large enough deterrence, right? Japan stopped when we nuked 2 cities. They're like, okay, fuck, let's cut it out.
Let's metaphorically, let's nuke Chicago.
Yeah.
It will have the same net result.
Mm-hmm.
Let's send in an army of agents supported by National Guard, CID, and MPs. Yeah. Let's detail 50 U.S. attorneys there and drop the $50 million it might take to restore some order to that town instead of sending the 50,000 to this Kennedy Center.
Yeah. I'm with you 100% on that. And that's the thing, is I think that is something that both the left and the right could absolutely come together on. Like, dude, you got to restore this shit. Not only that, but there's an actual economic.
But they can't, because they don't want to acknowledge, they being whoever, don't want to acknowledge that there's a problem, or that it's a problem that the government has to fix. Yeah. The people got to fix it.
Yeah.
They got to say enough of this.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times, everybody loves to point out how cops go into the projects or whatever, and they're pelted with rocks and I've had that shit happen to me 100 times. But 99% of the time, and we used to go heavy into the projects in Atlanta. It was cobble, I mean, it was nasty, dirty, hard, violent. And it never failed, because we'd lock the place down. We'd lock the whole projects down for a day, search everything, and make our arrests and do whatever. And it never failed. They wouldn't do it in public. They didn't want us to be seen out. But I had so many mothers or grandmothers or fathers or sisters and brothers come up to me, shake my hand, maybe pat me on the back and just say, thanks, man. This has just been untenable, man. My daughter can't even go into that little playground. It's right outside our front door. So thanks for doing this. And, we appreciate you, or whatever.
Yeah. Fuck.
They want it to stop, but they're terrorized. There's probably 1,000 gangsters terrorizing 300,000 people in South Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they have the guns. They've shown the willingness to use them, regardless of whether there's women and children present. That's not gangster shit. That's not being a good criminal. That's being an assassin.
Being a piece of shit. It's being a Nazi. You're not a hard ass. You're a piece of shit, right? And you don't ever see that. Whenever I see police officers, whenever I'm going for a walk or a jog, no matter where I am, I always make sure to just say something like, hey man, like, you only, I just say, I appreciate what you're doing. You guys got a target on your back, and I appreciate what you're doing. And you don't see that in the news, but most people, they don't, you can say, oh, there's only 1,000 gangsters and there's 300,000 people, but I mean, it's not 300,000 people acting as like a blob. It's me and my daughter, and I'm like, fuck this, I don't want her to get shot, you're staying inside. But that's how everyone thinks. And when you do that, it does, they probably would be for it. I mean, but then again, you do have, the city itself would have to, you have to ask for that, when Trump.
Well, I talk about some of that in my book,
Yeah.
Rats Cheating Death, but Living a Lie.
Yeah. Rat
So
snakes.
you can pick up Rat Snakes, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million.
And for everybody listening, we did 2 episodes in the past on rat snakes. It's a legitimately good book, and as I tell everyone, I'm my own boss. I only invite people on here that I want, and I only re-invite people that I like having on. So the fact that Mr. Shevlu's been on here 3 times now clearly shows he's a cool fucking dude. His book's
And
good.
it's much appreciated, by the way.
Yeah, man. And dude, and your book's good. I listen to more audiobooks than anyone I know. It's a good book. It's a funny listen. It's interesting. And I think I said this the first time we spoke. Every book I listen to, there's overlapping information, but I always try to find one like kernel of truth, one nugget of novel information. And more than anything, what I took away from your book, and I thought this was interesting, everyone that listens to this podcast knows I'm obsessed with the Cold War, is your book. To me, before that, I had this image, this model of society in my head, and that there are these national governments that went against each other: China, Britain, France, Germany, America, Russia, whatever. And then we had kind of like state governments to a lesser scale, and then it was just citizens. What your book showed me is there's actually this invisible kind of surface of the ocean that is society, and underneath it you've got the white supremacists, you've got the Latin kings, you've got MS-13, and you have all these different kind of mini nation states moving just beneath the surface. And there are these kind of mini kingdoms all throughout the United States, and I never in a million years would have thought about that, but your book does shed light on it. And it's you go, oh shit, it's not all good in the neighborhood. You're like, there are these little kingdoms moving around, and they will fucking kill you. They will.
Well, and the beauty of that is, and I hope that, because the book, as you know now that you've heard, is 10% about me and 90% about the cool people I know and work with.
Yeah.
It's comforting to me to know that people like you, some of my neighbors who are not involved in politics or current events, they're just trying to raise their family and stuff, can go to bed at night.
Yeah.
They don't need to know that that's going on, because there are those of us who are out there to make sure that it's not going to get to them.
Yeah. And that's an honorable thing. Yeah. It's because you're right. I mean,
but this whole defund the police foolishness and this
retarded.
Biden just announced he's going to submit, or Pelosi, or in concert, they're going to, this big police reform bill. We don't need to reform the police. We have the greatest, best trained, best motivated, best paid, best equipped law enforcement in the world.
Yeah.
Does every agency from the Shriners on up have a bad apple or could use some tweaking? But when you say police reform, that's insulting to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see you needing to reform the Army or the Marines or the Air Force and whatever. But somehow you have to reform these guys who have millions of contacts a year, save thousands of lives, and put themselves in harm's way. You can just say thank you and let it be known that, hey, there's a public concern for excessive force or whatever the current issue is. That doesn't require striking reforms. 99.999% of departments and their officers do good every day and sacrifice a lot to do it.
Yeah.
So I got your police reform hanging.
Yeah.
An excuse. And it's an excuse because it's easier to confront than lawlessness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's It's the bad apples. This doesn't mean that, you know, we gloss over them and say, you know, whatever. There's only a couple. No, it's good. Surgically remove them. Put them in court. It's remove them. They're pieces of shit. You shoot.
Fire them, prosecute them.
Yeah, treat them like you would a criminal. That's good. You don't need to wipe out the whole fucking police department, or else you're gonna have a lot worse problems on your hands. So,
yeah, because nobody seems to ask the question, or those who are anti-police or hyper-police reform, they don't have a solution. They're wanting to disband or defund or whatever it is they're wanting to do without adding the component that's going to replace those services and that safety net. And once they're gone, you know, Baltimore's down 700 sworn positions. Now, I can't even imagine what that does to their call log. The last thing I want to hear when I dial 911 is we'll get you as soon as we can, or we'll get somebody rolling that way eventually.
Because you know what that's going to lead to? That's going to lead to everyone going, I can't rely on the cops. I need a fucking gun. So if you want to get, you can't.
That was going to be my next statement.
Yeah.
If I can't depend on you to handle it, and that's a lot to put on the police, but I'm willing. Like, this guy's out there jacking my car, breaking windows right now. You know, I'm not going to go shoot him in the face as long as you guys are going to come get him off my shit, you know, save my family or whatever. I'm going to give you a reasonable amount of time to do your job, because that's what I do. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I tell you, somebody's kicking at the door and I can't tell who it is. I don't know what's going on, but they're banging. It's 3 a.m. They say, well, sir, our officers are tied up right now. Leaves me 2 options. Be a victim, matters into my own hand.
Yeah.
So talk about defunding policing. Cautionary tale. Hey, brother, I got to get running here in a few minutes.
No, I was about to.
Got any real?
I was about to wrap it up. Yeah, no, it's what I was going to say is, we can't have this whole, no one needs guns, get rid of them. We want to get rid of violence. Once you get rid of cops, you're going to have a bunch of untrained people deputizing themselves to protect their houses. And you're going to wish you only had one shooting a month.
We went through this, you know, during the early settler days.
Yeah.
You know, people handled their own business.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you want it to be the Wild West.
And I don't want that, but I'm perfectly capable of it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of my friends or neighbors aren't.
Yeah.
They're just not built for it. They were raised in a peaceful, law-abiding society, which now they have to have that discussion. I've got a couple neighbors that are the kindest, gentlest souls in the world. And I know they've had the conversation. Well, I've never had a gun, you know, and they're 70 years old or something. But I almost feel like I should almost get one or have one. I'm scared.
Yeah. And you're forcing people's hand into doing that. And let's wrap this one up. Mr. Sheffalou, author of Rat Snakes. I'll put that in the description as always. It's legitimately a good book. I've yet to recommend a bad book. I dare anybody to challenge me. And definitely have you back on. And I'm gonna text my friend.
Stay in touch, man.
Yeah, no, I love having you on, man. You're a cool fucking dude. I want to get you to do my buddy's podcast. He's got like twice as many subscribers as me. He's a Marine.
Oh, hell yeah. I want to do his shit. Then I'm done with you.
Fuck me. I'm old news, man. He's a cool guy, man. He's a Marine veteran. You'd love him. I've been bugging him. I'll try to get him to have you on. But we'll stay in touch, man. I'll send you this when it's uploaded. All right.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
All right,
Talk to you later.
Yeah, God bless. Take care.